Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Well, today I want to address a question that we have gotten from a couple of our listeners at this point that is a really good topic for us to cover, and that is, what should we use to track all this stuff? What does Good Sense recommend? There's all these systems, all these different ways to go about understanding our finances, and so which one is best? And it's a great question, and it's hard to answer. I want to dive into a couple of different options and ways that we want to think about it. But before we do, let's just level set. What are we looking for? When we think about tracking and understanding our overall stewardship and how we're using God's financial resources, there are several things that I think we really need to make sure are part of whatever system we're using. First, I think your best bet is for it to be automated. Now, we offer, as part of our Good Sense content through Freed Up, we offer a download of a Google Sheet just to at least get you started to understand your reality. And again, that's a huge part of the work we need to do, is just understanding our reality before we start changing it. And so for that purpose, that spreadsheet's very effective because it helps you categorize and understand where these resources are going. It's really, really critical that we do that. But as an ongoing system, it's a very difficult thing to maintain any manual input system. So if you are building all of this in a spreadsheet, that means you have to put all the transaction data in yourself. It's very hard for that to maintain itself and for you to continue to have the energy and the focus to put all that data in, week out. That's one huge flaw with manual systems. The other big issue with manual systems is if you built it, you're the only one that understands it. And so for a lot of couples, this becomes a point of contention because there's the spreadsheet person who built it, and the other person doesn't understand how it works, doesn't really understand the formulas, because the person who built it is the one who understands how those things interact with each other. And so you can unintentionally build on this power dynamic of the money person and the not money person. And that can be really, really toxic to the relationship. And so as a starting point to just understand your reality, a manual system is helpful. But as an ongoing system that allows you to really change your reality, you need something that's automated. And so we want to use software that links to our accounts, that downloads transactions, that categorizes things for us, or prompts us very easily to categorize them. But it needs to be some system that we don't have to maintain ourselves because we will quit doing it. And one of the issues is if you wait 3 months or 4 months, now all of a sudden the lift that it takes to get caught up is so heavy. And so we just never do it. The other thing that we need to really pay attention to is making sure that these systems that we're using are really understandable from a category standpoint. If we have 75 or 85 different categories, it is going to be hard for us to really be able to see where things are going because it's being spread too thin and it's too granular. We need to be thinking in higher level categories: housing costs, utilities, We need to think in terms of groceries, restaurants. These are not, we don't need to get super, super granular and detailed. We need to be able to really simplify things to a level where there's clarity because we're not getting too deep in weeds. So we need to have systems where the categories are already there for us as a starting point, or they're easy to build and it doesn't let you get too crazy in the level of detail you go to, because you can really get yourself confused when you have two categories that are really similar and you're not using the same one each time. You can start to get the data to be very muddy. We also need to make sure that these things track our net worth. If all we are tracking is our spending, we are only really making sure we're not digging the hole deeper. And that's helpful, but it can give us a false sense of confidence. If our bills are paid, that's a great place to be, but it's not good enough. We also need to be growing our net worth. And again, we grow our net worth by accumulating savings and paying down debt. We want to grow what we own and we want to pay down what we owe. And over time, we are making progress. If all we are doing is keeping our bills paid and our net worth is not growing, we are still heading for disaster over time. And so we need to make sure that these systems aren't just tracking budgets. They're also tracking our overall financial health and giving us a sense of whether we are climbing or we're staying stagnant. We need to be honest about the progress we're actually making. And sometimes a budget-only app will make you feel like you're financially healthy while you're actually in trouble. We also want to make sure that it's a system that we can use comfortably and consistently. I think of it a lot of times, people ask me, hey, which version of the Bible should I read? Which translation should I read? And my answer most often is whichever one you'll actually read. Just find one that actually works, but it's way better for you to read one that might be slightly off or a little bit different, or maybe the translation's not perfect in some people's eyes, but at least you're reading it. Most often we're stuck in this analysis paralysis and we never actually do the work. And so if the system that you're using to track your finances is overwhelming, you're not going to use it. If the system is too confusing or too frustrating, or it's not doing what you need it to do, then you're going to stop using it. And so I don't care. We at Good Sense don't care what system you end up using, as long as it's a system you'll actually consistently use. So if you find that these systems that you try are not working, they're just a little off, they're not easy to understand, they're not something that comes intuitively to you, then quit using that one and try something else. We want to quit quickly on some of these systems till we find one that actually fits us. And that's the good news. There's so many out there. Try them, get comfortable with them, and if you can't seem to get comfortable with them, then stop trying and move on. We need to find the one that you can stick with, because that's the one that matters the most. That's the one that's going to tell you the information that's most valuable, because it's really tracking the data. So often I'll talk to people that end up in situations where they haven't updated their system in a while. They have stale, broken categorization. They're not really looking at reality, but they're still making decisions on that bad information because the system's too hard and they just quit trying to make it perfect, but they stuck with a broken system. And that's worse than not having a system at all, because it might actually be telling you something that's really not helpful, that's actually steering you in the wrong direction. So just a real quick summary. We want to make sure it's automated. We want to make sure that the categorizations are easy to understand and easy to implement and they don't confuse us. We want to make sure that it tracks our net worth, and we want to make sure that we can actually stick with it and continue to use it over time. So let's dive into what the options are, because this is really the meat of the conversation. All of the ads that you're getting, if you've Googled any of these systems or you've downloaded any of them, I'm sure you're getting hit with offers from other competitive systems. You've heard radio ads, TV ads about all these things. And so how do we want to evaluate this stuff? Well, I want to start with the system that I'm most familiar with, because it's the one I use personally. And I can give you the pros and cons of that one, and then we'll just kind of move through a list. There is actually a great write-up in PC Magazine We can maybe drop a link to the articles that are rating these different systems, because it does do a really good job of kind of breaking down where they shine and where they have some flaws. Let's start with Quicken. What I like to call Quicken Classic, this kind of long tenured system. I have been using Quicken personally for probably 30 years at this point. It's a very comfortable system for me to understand, but it is a very complicated system. And so the biggest flaw with Quicken Classic is that you can do everything. It will track all of your moving parts at a very, very deep dive level. It is excellent if you are comfortable with more rich levels of accounting. If you can really understand the moving parts well, then you would probably really love Quicken. One of the challenges, though, is that Quicken, the classic version, is very dependent on a PC or a Mac, an actual computer. The app isn't super helpful. The real meat of the work that you're doing is on a desktop computer. And so you need to be in a place where that's something you're comfortable using in order for it to really be valuable to you. But it automates all of the importing of your transaction data. It tracks investments at a very deep level. It can even help feed into your tax return work. It does a really great job of giving you deep dive reports on all of your net worth, your history, your transaction data, so you can really understand your reality of what you tend to spend and when you tend to spend those things. The budgeting is less about restriction and more about just setting targets and structure. So if you are already pretty good about spending around your income level, Quicken is a great tool because it's more about just understanding. It's less about control. And so it's not going to force you into not spending. It's just going to tell you what you spent. And so if you're already in a place where money comes somewhat naturally to you and you understand it at a deep level and you want to go deep in it, Quicken Classic is a great system. It's not cheap, but it is an excellent product. I highly recommend it. But one thing I have seen as I've recommended it to people is that they tend to get bogged down in the detail. They tend to get to a place where they struggle to maintain it because it is a very detailed system. And so you can use it at a higher level. You can absolutely keep it relatively simple, but you'll always have the option to get into deeper weeds. And a lot of times that scares people, confuses them. They categorize a few things wrong and then they quit. So I love Quicken. I'm a big fan. But it is definitely more of an advanced system than some of the other systems we're going to talk about. Quicken, I think, understood that what they have is a very detailed and in some ways a complicated system. You can run super detailed reports that you can customize in a bunch of different ways. It is robust. But I think they realized that they needed an offering that makes things more simple. And so they've created a system called Simplify. Simplify spelled with an I at the end. And it's an app-based product. It is definitely exactly what its name indicates. It is a simplified version of the bigger Quicken system. And it is an excellent product. It is a great starting point because it does all the things that we say. It automates, it tracks your net worth, it puts that data right in front of you. It has really good reporting, really great and easy categorization. It's an excellent system to use if you are more prone to use an app. If you want to use it on your phone or your tablet, Simplify by Quicken is a really good product. It's also less expensive than the full version of Quicken. And so it's definitely, in my opinion, one of the best options out there. One product that is very popular is YNAB. And if you are familiar with YNAB, you already know what it stands for, but it is an interesting concept. It's been around for a while. It stands for You Need a Budget. And it is a great product for people who are struggling to really control where their resources are going. I don't think of YNAB as an excellent financial tracking tool. It doesn't track investments. It doesn't do some of the deep dive level things at the net worth level that a Quicken might do. But if you are just trying to understand where your money is going and stop yourself from being reckless in your spending, if you're looking for something that's going to put a little more of a control orientation on your tracking, YNAB is a great tool. It's got a lot of education in it. It teaches you about money in a really good way. It also systematizes and organizes things in a way where you're really needing to get the money before you can spend the money. And so it subscribes to the idea of giving every dollar a job. And that's a great way to think about it when you are struggling to figure out where your overspending is trapping you, is that you have to get a dollar and then tell that dollar where it's going to go. And YNAB is really built foundationally on that system. So it is, as a strength, it is a budgeting tool, an excellent budgeting tool. Beyond that, it does struggle to really give you helpful data. It is much more about controlling your month to month. It is less valuable in those deeper dive reporting and tracking kinds of systems. It does take a lot of time to get used to. It thinks in different ways. It forces you, like I said, to get the paycheck first before it actually will allow you to spend those dollars. And so there is a little bit of a learning curve there. It's not just an accounting system. It is built to really start to aim you in a different direction. And so if you are finding yourself consistently behind or struggling to understand why you're overspending or where that overspending is going, YNAB might be a great tool to start with. But over time, as you get healthier in your decision making on finances, as you're stewarding God's resources better, you may end up needing to graduate from YNAB into a higher level tracking system. Speaking of a higher level tracking system, Monarch. Monarch Money is a new entry into this whole tracking system industry. It's a good product. They have done a great job with using AI to integrate some of the onboarding. It helps you navigate how to think about some of this stuff. It does a really good job of reporting. Some of the reporting and the charts that it creates are really beautiful and visually easy to understand. They do a really good job in budget tracking. It allows you to decide what to do with any underspent dollars. So if you get to the end of the month and you didn't spend as much as you intended to on groceries, for example, you're able to then say, this is what those dollars are going to go to next month. So it can give you some direction on how to reorient or redirect some of the under and overspend on a month-to-month basis in a really easy and intuitive way. It's expensive in comparison to some of the other systems, but it is a robust system. It's a very good product, and so it's worth checking out. Maybe it's wired in a way, or the AI system that it uses will help you onboard in a way where it gives you some of that simplicity that you need in order to stay connected to it and keep using it. One that has been marketed quite a bit, you've probably seen ads for it, is Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a really interesting product. One of its biggest features, which is probably something we all could use, is this idea of being able to cancel your subscriptions that you're not even aware you're spending on. It's a really interesting way to recapture some of that lost cash flow that's probably just leaking out. All of our providers out there have realized that if they just charge us a small subscription fee, it gets lost in the shuffle. And so they can kind of take advantage of that absent-mindedness. It just folds into our normal spending, and we don't even remember that we're spending that money. And Rocket Money does a great job of finding where those issues are and then actually canceling those subscriptions for you in order to recapture some of those lost dollars. But beyond that, in terms of a tracking system, in terms of reporting, it's limited. It is helpful in understanding where things are going. It does have tracking. The reporting is somewhat limited to just a set of certain reports. It also does have some very limited investment tracking, but it's not super robust in terms of the level of detail that it goes into. It has some really helpful charts and some reports on net worth, which is helpful. It's we need to have that as kind of a base requirement. But it's not a strong contender to be a financial hub where all of your data is running through it and you can understand your reality really well. It's excellent at finding those lost dollars and getting them back, and that's a really helpful tool. But I don't know if I would recommend it as a system to track all of the moving parts of your spending. And so I hope this has been helpful, but I would say in just kind of priority order, The system that you're comfortable with and that you're familiar with and that you feel like you can use for the long term is your most important system. Go get it. Go find it as soon as possible. A faithful steward knows what they did with God's resources and why. And all of these systems at their base level will help you do that. So as long as you're willing to do it and as long as you're able to stick with it, all of these will be helpful. We want to unlock all of the freedom that comes from faithful stewardship. And the key that starts that process is being able to track and understand our reality before we start changing anything. And we need tools that will help us do that effectively. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.